Thank you, everyone, for coming to our talk today. I've got with me Dawn Sizer from Third Element Consulting. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about securing remote workforces and talk a little bit about challenges and solutions. Hopefully, some good solutions and nothing nothing that'll make your life any harder. But Dawn, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do for a living? And what your biggest fear is?
So I run an MSP down in South Central Pennsylvania. We have been around for 20 years. In fact, this year is our 20th year in business. So this is not my first rodeo by any stretch of the imagination. I've been doing the MSP model the entire 20 years. So here we are.
Okay, so you gave us your biggest fear, right? Running an MSP. What do you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. What I actually do for a living.
That's my biggest fear.
I'm
Uh,
really just the dog mom. That's all I do.
yes, just same. We were talking in the backstage about like being a cat, right? Like, just the life of a cat. But yeah, so let's dive right in. We're gonna try to keep this short and sweet and give some people some good tidbits. So we talk about the security challenges around remote workforce, right? Like, what do we think about, right? Because I think for a lot of us, we talked about it for a long time. We talked about how it would never work or there are security holes, and then like COVID happened, and we realized that like if our business was gonna survive, or if our way of life was gonna survive, like we had to work remotely. So what do you see as security challenges when we talk about remote workforces, Dawn?
I mean, there's a gazillion of them, right? There's tons of things that we can't control. As soon as a user gets into their own environment, there are things we can't control there. One of the big things that we've run into are clients or potential clients that want to use the bring your own device thing, which I dislike for all kinds of different reasons.
You mean you don't want to just introduce foreign assets into your secure networks, Dawn? I mean,
As long as they're willing to put them into Intune and have them, apply to all of the policies that go along with it, I really don't have as big of an issue with it. It's the things outside of IT's control, right? So there's that part of things that I think they're difficult to live with, they're difficult to talk about, and the client has a difficulty understanding why it matters.
all right, so we were talking about key security challenges, right? What you see from the MSP side. What do you see from like a culture side of like working remote, right? Because there's the idea that we can all work remotely, and like we got through it, and now there's like a return to office initiatives going on. So like, what do you see culturally with remote workforces? What are people saying about it, right?
Depends. Some of them were happy to come back.
Yeah.
Some not so much. They're like, oh, I'm so much more productive at home. And I get that. I do. Like, I'm way more productive usually at home too,
Yeah.
on all different levels.
Yeah, same, right? Like the return to office thing has always been a little of a I guess a sore thumb or a sore piece for some people, right? Because we feel like we were productive or we were productive, but like, how do you measure? Do you measure differently between remote work from home versus in office? Like, how do you measure, or what's the pitfalls around measuring like productivity or something to that effect?
I mean, I guess it all depends on if we're measuring for ourselves, if we're measuring for a client, right? If we're measuring for ourselves, it's a super easy KPI of, how many tickets have you done? How much time have you billed? What does that actually look like? It's super easy to tell because we're using some type of PSA ticketing system, and you can tell when people were actually doing work. If you're looking from the client aspect, and a lot of the conversations that we've had with clients was, how do we know if our clients are actually working or if they're just moving their mouse, right? So
you, you get a mouse you get a mouse jiggler for like $10 on Amazon and just moves your mouse.
Exactly. So then you get into the productivity trackers, right? And there's all kinds of different software out there for that actually is taking screenshots of what your users are doing to be able to prove that they were working, they weren't working. What does that actually look like? And thankfully, the couple of clients that we had that actually enacted those, it was just because they had a hunch that things weren't going as well as they should have been.
Mhm.
And then they wanted to take a look, like, can we prove they really aren't working? Or can we prove that it's just our KPIs aren't correct? Which I think was a really good way of looking at it. So
Yeah, for sure. So getting back to the topic of security, right? What are without giving away all your secret sauce, like how do you manage security for those work from home users, right? Like what do you do? Like I know it's a broad topic of like what do you do? How do you prevent people from hurting themselves from is there an OSHA regulation for not
if only there were regulations on all kinds of different things. So if you look at it from the standpoint of like 365, right? How tight can you pull down 365 security? Can you put conditional access in? What does that look like for your folks? Can they work in one place? Can they work in multiple locations? What does that actually look like? And how tight can you get your security just in 365? And you might be looking at it from the secure score. You might be looking at it from all different ways of how can I secure this environment. I mean, we talked about Intune previously as well. Just getting devices enrolled and making sure MFA is turned on and all of those simple things, right? Do the easy stuff first.
Yeah. The low hanging fruit, right? Like, and that's part of the challenge, right? Like where MSPs come in and we just look at it from a technical perspective. But if we start to understand like workflow, right? And we say, okay, how do you get this task accomplished? And how can we either improve upon it or make it a little bit more secure without like completely breaking or making the process way harder than it needs to be? And I think that's like the challenge with MFA is like, oh, there's an additional step I have to do now. And like it throws my traditional process of like just knowing my username and password. Now I may have to do like a challenge off, or maybe I have a new device and I can't just, set up email on my phone. I have to contact support and put in a ticket to have it enrolled into it unless you do some kind of self-enrollment. Like, how do you overcome that challenges with the clients, right? Whenever they push back and they're like, we don't need MFA, or we don't need these, we don't need BYOD management or MDM management, right?
So I think that's what happens if, right? You have to have that conversation of, sure, we can do it that way, but you have to understand this will happen. At one point in time, this is going to happen. We've had the conversation around MFA and what that actually looks like. We've had the conversation even around token stuffing and what that looks like, right? Understanding how that functions, and because of course you have the clients that are like, well, we had MFA turned on. Well, yeah, but this is the type of thing that can happen then. Like your users still have to be sentient at the end of the day, right? Brains still have to function.
Yeah, they have to apply a little bit of logic, a little bit of brain power during the day. Like, can't just be dummy proof.
Yeah.
As soon as you solve a problem, right? They build a better idiot, I think is the old saying.
Yeah, and it is like how can you keep things from the average user breaking them, and or how much education is just the right amount so that everybody understands, but you're not going over their head, you're not dumbing it down too far, and everybody's kind of resonating with what's in the middle there.
Yeah, I think like you have to have that balance though, right? Between security being transparent and security being, something that users participate in, right? Because I think we try to make it so transparent that people don't even sometimes understand that they have security in place, or they don't fully recognize the repercussions from it. And sometimes you put it in their face too much and they push back because it's disruptive. It's like finding that like middle balance a little bit, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that even goes further as like, so this is a problem I have. So like we at Sherweb, right, we have conditional access policies. So I can only log in from specific IP addresses tied to our SASE product, right? And the other day I was trying to access something in our CRM. I'm not going to name it. I'm going to try to do as much OSET as I can on this. And it was like, it's giving me permissions errors. And I was like, hey, what the hell's going on? Right. And like, I looked in my VPN client, but my SASE client was having problems connecting, like reboot, connected, and then everything started working. Right. So like, there can be some hindrances if people don't understand. So like, what do we do around like end user education? What do we have in place? How is it helping protect you? And like, how can you be the one that doesn't become the problem? Right.
Right. So, I mean, let's take one simple thing. It's summertime. Everybody's traveling. You mentioned you can only log in from certain places, right? I think that's a really good spot to start, is the educating the client. Like if you're traveling, if you want to take your device, your laptop, whatever that is, let us know where you're going. Yeah. Tell us ahead of time. Like, hey, I'm going to be in Aruba. I'm going to be in Mexico. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be there. And that way we know that that's happening, and our SOC is telling us that, hey, we have, somebody trying to get it in Mexico. Well, yeah, that's where they are. That's totally fine. And we know that ahead of time. So you're not blocked, you don't have a problem, and everything is seamless. But if you're just going, not letting anybody know, there's going to be a lag, right? And that's with any client. It's the same thing even with my team. When I travel, I let them know where I'm going, what that's going to look like. If I'm turning a VPN on, where that VPN is actually coming from, because a lot of time the VPN is not where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember those challenges too. Like we had an alert. We used a third party like Office 365 monitoring tool. And we had said, we're like, all right, under normal circumstances, nobody should be able to log in from outside the US into Office 365. And if it does, we should get an alert, right? We should at least investigate, like not block, like, and do some other things. Like maybe it blocks it or maybe re-ask for MSA, I don't know. And like one time I remember we had this client and all of a sudden like, it's like, you logged in from Ireland. And I was like, well, that's unexpected. And like we'd look at the logs and show them like, oh, you were in Atlanta. So like then you were in Chicago and then you were in Ireland. So like apparently you're probably traveling. So like we do what we normally do. We lock the account until we can figure out exactly what's going on. And eventually a guy called and was like, can't get into my email. You know, we're just like, well, are you traveling? He's like, yeah, I'm visiting relatives in Dublin. We were like, oh, okay, we'll re-enable it. But like they would have given us a heads up. Like you said, we could have prevented that, or at least, you know, kept them from having a few hours of problems before you log a ticket and we were able to fix it. But we've seen some doozies. Like we had one guy who's like, yeah, I went fishing off the coast of South Africa. Why? I was like, well, normally when we see a login from an African country or, you know, something to that effect, like it's malicious logins. I've seen tons of them. And he's like, no, I'm out here fishing. And we're like, okay, all right. We just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. And the cruises are another one, right? Depending on where they're at any given time, it's bouncing all over the place. So those can be questionable. So.
Yeah. And look, you know, like I never dreamed of having the nomad life, but like, you know, people with, you know, living their expensive camper vans now, which are really like those have come a long way since the 70s and 80s. And like you have Starlink now. So now you get like fantastic internet speeds. You can pretty much work from anywhere. So does that mobility or of that type of lifestyle, how does that play in? Like, how do you secure those types of people? Or like they maybe not at home, so you can't really have a same like a normal work environment, or what we consider a traditional work environment.
Exactly. So then you decide what can you control, right? What's beyond your control, and you have that really frank conversation of, you know, these are the things that are going to be outside of our control. We can't control these particular things, but here's the list of things that we can control.
Yeah.
Right. We have a SOC. We have this. We have zero trust architecture or infrastructure or whatever that looks like for you. We have these products and it ticks these particular boxes, but these are the ones that are outside of our control. And these are the things you need to be aware of. So I think, again, it's that really good middle of the road education, right? Here are the things that we can control. These are the things that we need you to do because they're outside of our control, and be very specific about that. Put it in writing if you need to, whatever that looks like for the client so that they understand it, understand what they're getting into, and just how to avoid some of the pitfalls that go along with it.
Yeah. I remember when we first started pushing like MFAs, this was years ago with our clients. And like we eventually we had like an email compromise, and they were like, how could this happen? We have MFA. And I was like, well, you know, if you give them they phish you, you give them the MFA code, like it's still problematic. Like MFA is not bulletproof. It's better than having nothing. It's better than, and it's the same thing. When we go to like password hygiene, why do we have to rotate passwords? Like, because, you know, if you're using multiple places, you know, and then that place gets breached, it's outside of our control. Maybe it's an Amazon account or a Facebook account, something like that. It's the same username and password you use to log into your work email. Like we're going to have problems. So like, right. I think a lot of it's education and letting them understand that this is not a bulletproof solution. Because I think a lot of the security challenges we have nowadays is like we sell it as sometimes we sell it as a bulletproof solution, and we come back 2 years later and be like, all right, well, we have to make some more changes because, you know, security has changed or the landscape has changed or regulations have changed or whatever. And then, you know, now we're kind of backed ourselves into a corner. So how do you have that conversation around those security challenges? Like, this is going to be iterative. How do you talk to a client about that? Let them know that this is going to be evolving and ever changing. And change is good, I guess. How do you convince them that change is good?
I think if you baseline it that way, which we have done, right? Security is an ever evolving thing, and we're lucky in the respect that we started out with law enforcement security being a part of our base clientele. So they kind of understand that in some respects. I think they get lost, and every client gets lost on the why does it have to be so stinking tight, right? Well, if you throw pasta into a sieve or, a colander, the water comes through, right? If it's the same type of thing. Like you want the right things coming through, but not everything coming through. So, and even getting back to the MFA conversation, right? I mean, how many clients have we all had that, well, it prompted me, so I just put the numbers, right? Were you even at your computer? Well, no.
My favorite was push notifications, right? Like I've got and you get push fatigue or whatever it is, where like you get 20 to 30 notifications back to back of someone trying to log in, and you just be like, I'm just gonna hit yes and stop these alerts. You're like, that's not how that works. You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah. Yep. So I think having those conversations of like, if you're not physically there, if you're not physically working, if you're not doing a thing and you're getting prompted, don't respond. Just don't respond. And it's the same thing, whether it's a mobile text from somebody you don't know, whether it's MFA, whether it's an email. If something doesn't look right, feel right, whatever, just don't respond to it. If somebody really needs to get a hold of you, it's weird, but they'll call you eventually.
Hopefully. You already get a certified letter in the mail, which is normally what I get.
Or just call them. If you're just not sure, just call them.
Yeah. That's what we used to say. Like, we'd always, if it was something weird, we'd hang up and call them back on a verified number, like a number that we have. Like, don't grab the phone number from the email they sent you because, the signatures, they usually update signatures and everything.
Yeah.
Call back on a number in our CRM. Or at least run that number through like a Google search or something to see what number comes back, right? Like, because there's been some instances that I've read where like the people have done like form submissions to say like change my contact information. It's been some doozies of some of the attacks, but for the most part, right, you should be able to confirm that number is the number you call back on.
It's interesting. We have had a couple of employees that were dismissed from clients kind of scenario, calling us to get like their account re-enabled and things like that. So I think those types of things, just in the MSP itself, I know this isn't like big remote workforce kind of thing, but if you don't know who's actually working somewhere or should be working somewhere and they're calling to get their account re-enabled, like when you have thousands of people that you deal with on the daily as an MSP, how do you know all of these things? Like, how good does your communication have to be? And that comes back to that, like, how good is your ticketing system? How good is the communication that you have internally? Do you have a separate list of those types of people? Who is your contact at that particular site? Do they need to know about that right away? Like, is there a case that's going on with that person? Like, there's all kinds of different things that go around that. And again, while it's not necessarily the securing the remote workforce, it's something that we see on the regular just as a point of attack.
Yeah. And I think it's complicated too with remote workforce because, again, like, you can't go off locality, right? So like, can't say like, they don't sound like they're from Boston, right? So that's so like the normal audio cues you take in to say if something's legit or not, like maybe subconsciously, you're like, all right, well, that person, you can't use those anymore. So like, how do you verify? Like, and again, without giving away any secrets, right? Like, how do you verify who that person is on the other side of the Zoom call or the phone call or the ticket, right?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a secret. I mean, we keep the cell numbers on the user's information in the PSA, so it's easy just to send them a text or give them a push or whatever, because you can push right through 365 even. Yeah. So there's ways of going about this to make sure that the person is who they say they are.
Yeah. All right. So we're getting close to our 20 to 25 minute mark. I don't like talking about products, but like if you were thinking about moving or securing a remote workforce, what would be more important to you? Would you push more in user education, or would you push people to like more modern VPN solutions like SASE? Which way would we go? Or are they both equally important?
I think they're both equally important, but I think the passive nature of having product to do some of the things is one, smart, but also it takes the human element out of the situation. So as long as it's configured correctly, we know it's going to work. The human element, we don't know if it's always going to work the way that we want it to, based on, emotion or challenges, or they're just having a bad day.
Yeah. It goes on to like, I've been seeing some of the products out there around AI sentiment where like it reads an email and tells you what the sentiment is and like how to respond and everything else like that. Like that's a little scary sometimes because again, if you're using it for analysis and again, someone's having a bad day and their sentiment is off from what they normally do, like how do you really understand if that's like a real person? Like that's really them or not? Because their sentiment changes. Humans change pretty often, sometimes not for the best, right? So it's always hard to determine who's human and who's not.
I like how you think anybody's human anymore. We're all using like regular emails.
My grandmother was 20% titanium by the time she finished it. wasn't really starting to be a more machine than woman at some point. Don't edit that out, content team. Keep that part in. But yeah, that's always the balance, right, between the human side of things, the people part of like a security program and the technology part. Right, one can't exist without the other.
Right.
And I think like when we start to talk about like how SASE tools can help you cut down on your attack surface, right, by only allowing you through like a singular point of entry. We talk about the end user education, right? There's still a human element that we tend to ignore sometimes when we talk about technology. So, again, like don't be scared of remote workforce. I always tell people, especially like we talk about AI adoption, same thing. I tell people like don't be scared, be cautious. I think scare is an emotion and cautious is a logical approach to it. But like understanding where your risks are at. So any final thoughts, Dawn, on remote workforce before we wrap those?
Put appropriate rails around everything. I don't care if it is policy driven. I don't care if it is product driven, but as long as there are rails around things and expectations are set appropriately, people know what they're supposed to do and not supposed to do. That way, at least you have a way to control the things that you can.
Awesome. Well, Dawn, I want to thank you for coming today and giving some words of wisdom, and hopefully, we get some people to change their mind or change their security posture around remote workforce. If someone wants to reach out to you, Dawn, what's a good way? LinkedIn.
LinkedIn's always a great way. I'm pretty active there, so yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn, or you can find me on the Tech Degenerates Discord.
No cold calling on LinkedIn.
No.
Don't send Dawn a cold call.
You won't like it.
All right, Dawn. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, not only as a friend, but as a great partner at Sherweb as well. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Roddy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.